kind of technology issue. Welcome to the Kansas Emerging Aviation Technology Working Group meeting. And just please make sure your mics are on mute. This, again, is being recorded and we'll make it available. We're going to go a little bit off script here. Real quick introduction to the Department of Commerce's, partnership at our Department of Commerce. Is Joshua on the call, Tim?
I'm looking to see. I know he was planning on jumping on, but I'm not seeing him yet.
Okay. Well, while he does that, Tim, do you want to make a quick introduction or introduce yourself? I know that, again...
hey, Joshua just got on. He is on.
Okay. Josh.
How are you?
Josh, well, thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself. We haven't talked about commerce much recently, so please introduce yourself.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll try to make a change to that. I assure you, we like to talk about ourselves as much as humanly possible. That is all to say. Thank you for having me. I am Joshua Jefferson. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Business Development for the Department of Commerce for the state of Kansas. Rather new to Kansas and rather new to the role as of January. Came from the Phoenix metropolitan area. I was out there for the last 17-ish years. I'm a pilot, also a Part 107 UAS operator. Been involved in many aerospace and defense attraction projects out in Arizona. That was kind of my forte. So I eat, sleep, and breathe that language as much as humanly possible, but it is a pleasure to meet everybody on the call, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this group. I think there's a lot of incredible knowledge that we've brought together to really assist with a lot of these efforts as we move forward. Ray, thank you for having me today.
Thank you for joining. Tim, do you want to go ahead and jump in since you're with Commerce as well?
Absolutely. So Tim Zimmerman, I'm also, like I said, with Department of Commerce. I'm on the Inside Business Development team. My title will actually be Economic Development and UAS Integration Project Manager. So again, kind of same attributes. I'm a private pilot, but I also have my Part 107. So I've done quite a bit commercial drone flights and different things like that. And I'm kind of the person out in the field for Commerce that's going to lead the drive for UAS and AAM integration into the state. And yeah, glad to be here and look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Tim. You guys have anyone else on with Commerce by chance before I move on?
I do not believe so. I think that's it, Ray.
That sounds good.
I'm here if that matters, but it's fine.
Tim, this is Lori Piper.
Hi.
I'm here with the International Division. I'm the Assistant Director for Global Resources.
Don't listen to me, Ray. Sorry.
That's how these things go. Lori, and then I'm sorry, Corey, go ahead.
That's okay. I'm Corey Keller. I'm with the Office of Innovation.
Well, thank you guys all for joining us. Commerce is one of our state government partners, and we hope to work very closely within this effort. Again, state of Kansas effort. So appreciate everyone coming. First up, Textron Aviation, Mr. Tony LaCourte.
Thanks, Ray. And I'm going to share my screen here to bring up the slides. Can everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Before I get into the slides, though, I'll kind of go over a little bit of my background. So I am Tony LaCourte. I'm the Director of External Affairs for Textron Aviation. Aviation is a newer business segment within the broader Textron family of business units. We focus on sustainability. I'll get more into that here in a second, but my background is retired United States Air Force, did everything in the Air Force from operations to maintenance to flight safety to instruction. When I got out, I ended up being hired by Boeing to do UAS integration and certification, as well as flight safety at a little company called In Situ up in the Pacific Northwest. While I was there, I was asked to open up a new portion of the business underneath Boeing Autonomous Systems, doing joint integration, certification, test, and commercialization of not only sea, subsurface, but land and air. So got a lot of background in that. While I was doing that, the FAA came along and said, hey, we got this unique opportunity for you. And that always sounds great when somebody approaches you and offers you a job, but it was to be a program manager with an integration pilot program. So for all you Part 107 holders, I was the evil empire back in the day. If you're trying to get your license, I had the city of San Diego, the city of Reno, as well as Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And underneath those three elements, there was probably anywhere from 100 to 150 different industry partners. Some of them, were Kansas DOT as well. So after that, I had wrote and authored the Beyond program when I left. And of course, COVID hit while I was in the FAA. So a better part of my last 6 months to 8 months in the FAA was during COVID. Gave me an opportunity to write the Beyond program, which is currently underneath, execution. And then I got another offer from Bell after I left the FAA to come down and work UAS as well as eVTOL development. And so I was in the innovation at Bell for about a year, which leads me to where I am now. I've been with Aviation for about three and a half years now. While I was at Bell, they started this Aviation division or business unit. And you can see on the screen, it's one of 6 business units formerly underneath Textron, the broader umbrella of Textron. It was stood up to be a pioneer in the innovation technologies, hybrid electric, sustainable aviation, if you will. And, not only to look at how feasible those technologies were, but to proliferate them across the other business units that you see on your screen here. So, they're comprised of Bell, Textron Aviation, which is Cessna and Beechcraft. Some of you are familiar with that here in Kansas. And then in 2022, we managed to see a company over in Slovenia, Aviation, Slovenia, named Pipistrel, who pioneered a lot of the electric aviation elements that exist today. In fact, today they have the first and still only certified electric aircraft in the world with the Velis Electro. One of the things that we were, chartered with here in Wichita was to, grow and develop and flight test the Nexus eVTOL, which is a multi-tilt rotor, actually, eVTOL. So that's the project we have here in Kansas, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But, one of the things that Textron's great at is, seeing what the future is and being able to identify those core capabilities that we may not have and going out and acquiring and partnering with folks that do that. So along came Pipistrel. They're in Aviation, Slovenia. They have manufacturing in Gorica, Italy. They manufacture everything from light sport aircraft gliders all the way up to hybrid electric VTOLs, such as the Nuva cargo platform. And we'll get into that a little bit here in the next slide. Shortly after that, we did the acquisition. We started looking at other capabilities. And just recently this year, you see on your screen, Amazilia Aerospace, which is based in Munich, Germany. They specialize in autonomy and in flight controls. And so we started compiling these core capabilities. I think you're going to see that across the broader industry now in eVTOL companies or even in hybrid electric, that, some of these companies that are startups will start looking at other companies that have these core competencies or capabilities to do certification, integration, and testing. So here is the comprehensive product portfolio. And one of the neat things about this is when you look at Textron Aviation, so the Cessna Beechcraft line, and you look at where they specialize in piston aircraft and jets, you come along with the light sport line. The Panthera is a 4-seat high-performance aircraft, but this meshes well with the product lines that we currently have to have that comprehensive portfolio. But more importantly, each one of these aircraft, from the ultralight, to the Alpha Trainer, the Velis Electro, and the Surveyor, have all been looked at as an electric aircraft or have electric aircraft technologies within them. Batteries are a big thing. We can talk about batteries all day, but Pipistrel is the pioneer and the leader in this space in integrating. In fact, the Panthera there you see on your screen is flown. It did the first hybrid electric flight underneath the MAHEPA program in the EU. So there's a lot of programs that Pipistrel works in the EU as design and development. And in fact, they are credited with the first hydrogen flight, not only gaseous, but liquid hydrogen as well. And they were in partnership with folks like Joby and others to do the integration work on these aircraft. Off to the right, the far right, you see the Nuva. That is a hybrid VTOL. And you can't tell from the picture, but it is 50 foot wide by about 45 foot long. So it's a large aircraft. It holds the volume of Cessna Caravan. So 3 European pilots or 3 US pilots. It's to us, this is the game changer. This is the actual first step into AAM, if you will. And, they're doing flight testing on this right now over in Slovenia in Italy. Amazilia below, you can see they've specialized in everything. I said they were autonomy and flight controls. So from the mini freighter, which actually does delivery of goods using almost the same methodology as Zipline, where they're dropping a package and there's this manufactured parachute type of device on the back of the box. They've done this in humanitarian efforts abroad. The Surveyor, which is an ISR platform, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The endurance on this is right now about 30 hours. They're taking it to about 60 hours in their evolution of the platform, but that's a long time. And given where I came from, in Boeing, persistent ISR is a huge thing right now globally, if you will, and even on the border. L-39 is a jet, but that's mainly their flight control aspects, and they do the flight controls and flight control computers on the Nuva. And of course, that's all done overseas in Munich and in Slovenia. And then here in Wichita, we have the Nexus eVTOL. We specialize in technology integration and evolving those technologies. And that's what the premise was in the beginning of why we stood Aviation up, is to grow these technologies and proliferate. But one of the things we are chartered with is not to find the 1,000 ways things won't work, but the 1 or 2 ways things will work. So as you know, that's a challenge. But you can see the history that we have now that we've acquired in this developmental chain of these technologies. And you can see all the way to the left, to 2007 till today, all the efforts that we have. So I think when you look at a company that specializes in electric flight, hybrid flight, you're not going to go much further than this company here between, eAviation, Pipistrel, and Amazilia. There's a lot of experience here. So I'm happy to discuss this further, down the road if we need to. A little bit more on the Nexus. So some of you may recall that the Nexus eVTOL may have been a project that was stood up by Bell about 7 years ago. When eAviation was formed, it was based in Wichita, Kansas, and they decided to move that program here. Bell was focusing on things like the V-280 win at the time, and it just made more sense since this division was focused on sustainability, more importantly, electric hybrid aviation, that, the Nexus start here. And some of you may see that the evolution of the design has changed. Bell launched the original Nexus out at CES, I think was in 2017, and it had a ducted rotor appearance to it. And so this is the culmination of not only Textron eAviation, but Bell, Textron Aviation, Cessna, and Beechcraft engineers coming together. And I think that's one of the unique things that this division underneath, the Textron umbrella brings, is that collaboration that I'm not saying it didn't exist before, but it wasn't as heavy as it is now. And so there are Bell engineers that sit here. There's aviation engineers that sit in our group. And I think that's one of the things that makes this a little bit more of a dynamic organization, because we can leverage that 100 years of experience in certification, engineering, manufacturing, and, support. So the Nexus eVTOL is a 4-passenger multi-tilt rotor, as I mentioned, with right now a range of 50 nautical miles. That's being very conservative. We're targeting 100 nautical miles in the long run, but right now we're at 50 nautical miles, and right now we're at a demonstrator vehicle. The one thing I'll say about the demonstrator vehicle is that it's built with a certification pedigree in mind. And so you can see that picture down on the bottom with the fuselage coming together. We're taking the same process and approach to building this aircraft as we've done in the last 100 years with our helicopters and our fixed wings and piston aircraft and jets. So we feel like, we're not behind by any means or anything like that. I know there's a lot of folks out there flying and doing certification right now, but we're doing all the hard work, I think, up front, so that when the time comes to take this platform into certification and operationalization, that, we've already done that math, if you will. Right now we're looking at, and we've always looked at this vehicle being a multi-purpose vehicle. So everything from air ambulance to air taxi, and I think air taxi is probably the last on our list. We specialize here in Textron Aviation for selling pistons and private jets to folks, and the same thing applies to this. This will be a personal use vehicle as well. But think of public aircraft operations, so military use, police use, search and rescue, not so much flying, looking for people, but recovery is the most important piece of that operation. So, and then of course, commercial operations, and then even cargo. Key enablers, I think we're looking at right now. The regulatory environment is still pretty fluid. I think we're starting to coalesce. The FAA is, EASA kind of put out a roadmap early on, but I think there's still challenges with people negotiating and navigating that space. And what people are failing to realize, I think, on both sides, on the industry and the regulatory side, is that it's more than just a vehicle. It's a certification of the airmen, the airspace, and the aircraft, right? And so there's an ecosystem that goes with AAM. And I think when you look back at the integration of UAS, there was some failures, I would say, pretty boldly, that we didn't plan appropriately as a nation to roadmap how we were going to integrate these. And so there were folks from all walks trying to do operations and weren't getting approvals. And that was the intent of the IPP, was to operationalize UAS. And we found that the processes, the legacy processes in the FAA weren't supportive enough to actually get a vehicle from one side of the fence to the other and to get operational. And even when they did try to certify that vehicle, there was lots of operational provisions that were placed on that. So still uses for small UAS, still uses for, AAM vehicles. But I think, there was supposed to be an intent to operationalize by industry, consensus. And so there's a lot of industry that come together in these, working groups, from General Aviation Manufacturers Association to AUVSI to you name it. The list is endless, but they're all not talking together. So there's a lot of churn coming from one side or the other. And I think what we can do as an organization or as a group is kind of coalesce around a message for Kansas to support the integration effectively and efficiently, instead of creating more churn. And so there's a lot of examples of this in Georgia and in other states that have actually roadmapped how they would integrate at their level, at the state and local level, rather than just relying on the federal government to dictate this is how things are going to be done. So I am happy to take questions about what we're doing here in Kansas. Did I lose everybody?
So as far as the operation here in Kansas, what size is it, or what kind of resources do you have towards it right now?
So right now we're working with Salina Airport, leveraging some of the Twister MOA off to the west there, to develop a staging point for the Nexus eVTOL. I would say the Nuba is probably going to be here prior to the Nexus, or maybe they'll be there concurrently together. But working with them to build out a plan for facilities and resources, what I would say is we're going to bring a lot of the infrastructure we need. We have like diesel generator trucks that we'll bring up to recharge the aircraft until we start to build out that national infrastructure and agree and coalesce to what that Karman architecture is. Right now, there's still a lot of conversation about that. We will need, so when you think about it, with a range of 50 miles, you're not going to just take the eVTOL from here in Wichita and fly it up to Salina. So we got to disassemble it and actually put it on a flatbed, truck it up there, and put it back together. We will do hover testing here in Wichita, right off McConnell Air Force Base. NIAR is building a hover pit for us to actually test a lot of the dynamics before we actually put it in the air. So we're going to do a lot of ground tests, have it tethered down to that hover pit. And that hover pit is about 15 feet above the ground. So it gives us that out of ground effect type of performance characteristics when we're testing control laws.
And Tony, what sort of state as far as, help with federal aviation, regulation. I'm just trying to understand what you guys need as far as assistance from us. What can we do to help?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so one of the things is, as we continue to work with the Salina Airport Authority, it's identifying the opportunities to engage not only the regulators, but state and local authorities, from fire departments to police to emergency services, because you have to have that emergency response plan, and socializing what this is, because a lot of people are afraid of it because it's new, and some people say novel. And so that makes it scary. It makes it scary for the regulator because they don't know how electric motors may fail. And so that presents challenges of being able to move forward. But I would say is that socialization, community as well, letting them understand what we're doing, bringing them into roundtables to ask questions, or, focus groups. What is it that they need out of this? Ray and I have talked about this before. One of the target use cases for the Nexus is air ambulance. And so 80% of, the state of Kansas is served by some type of emergency service. But there's that 20% or so that's not. And how do we best serve that community and bring aviation to them with the capability of providing emergency services and save lives ultimately? So there's that. And then it's, we've got people on the federal government side or in our company that work with the federal government side. And we have a good relationship with Senator Moran's office, with Estes' office, and even David's office. So I would say that whatever communications that we have a one voice. I think there's a lot of competing priorities within the state sometimes, and, we can override each other. And then the last thing would be support for, if we're really making this a Kansas effort, is coming together. And Ray and I have talked about this too, and joining up to support, funding opportunities, that government, dollars. If there's an infrastructure bill out there, let's get it in Kansas, but we really got to have a roadmap of what it is that we want to do in Kansas too. I think, we've got great ideas about bringing AAM here, charging infrastructure, but have we actually done an analysis of, what kind of vehicles are out there, and what would be, if we put chargers across, all of Kansas, will they be used? And we probably have more chargers than the rest of the, United States for EVs. So, because I know there's not a lot of those in. So I want to make sure that the money that we request is used effectively and that it supports Kansas, right? Not, bring in, it's okay to bring other business in, but the fact of the matter is it still comes down to Kansas in the long run. So.
Tony, thank you. Sorry, everyone. I had some computer issues. I dropped off like 3 times. So I think everything is finally working. Love technology. I'm hopeful to go back and catch the recording. But Tony, one question I had for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the hydrogen, whether liquid or gaseous form. So when we're looking at potential on-site generation at an airport, electric or solar is the first thing that comes up. What's the potential need for hydrogen as a second fuel source?
So, I mean, we're going to move that way eventually. There's going to be glacial pressure there, right? But the fact that we still haven't pushed an eVTOL, even a UAS, a small UAS, into a operational regime where it's consistent and it's, economically viable. I would say hydrogen needs to be investigated, but think about all the different types of hydrogen and how it forms, right? So there's blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, gray, black hydrogen, right? And all those are the methodologies. They're assigned those colors based on the methodology used to extract it. And, even with black, they pump that CO2 back into the earth as they're doing that process. So getting to a place where we're almost like a carbon neutral type hydrogen, capability, it's going to be a while. But I think, as long as that's incorporated in a long-term roadmap or strategy for the state, it's something to definitely entertain and talk about. Containment, fire suppression, those types of things. There's a lot of people worried about that, even parking an electric eVTOL next to a gas-powered airplane, right? So it's a lot.
That's a good point. Have you experienced or has there been any release, or as you're going through this exercise, On the airport kind of ARF index ratings, is there a special rating associated with that, with, the transition to electric aircraft?
Yeah, so right now in a lot of the industry working groups that we have, like Vertical Flight Society and even AUBSI, they're starting to bring in. Well, they've had all along, the National Fire Prevention, and I can't remember their acronym right off the top of my head, but they've had them involved looking at what it would take to, one, battery containment on ramps, because they want to separate those things, and those are very high requirements, right? To contain 5,000 degrees and thermal runaway if you have to, and a place to charge without impeding on, everybody else that's utilizing the airport. One of the things that I would say is the containment area for hydrogen is a lot broader than it is for electric. I mean, that area of probability is smaller for electric than it is for hydrogen, but they are looking at it. There's draft documents out there on the web that they've published on what they're thinking, but there's nothing, no one's coalesced around, hey, this is the rule or this is how we're going to do this. I think more right now it's exposure for emergency responders to electric battery fires. And I would say that there is a stark and difference between EV cars and eVTOL aircraft. They do the same thing. The batteries are kind of the same architecture, but it's a different response. I mean, you got a carbon fiber airplane, right, versus a metal car. So in some cases, carbon fiber cars as well. But yeah.
One thing at a recent FAA symposium on AAM, the FAA said that they are currently reviewing the firefighting standards and will release information on their website within the next few months. And I think we've engaged with those officials, and I'm hopeful that we can get that information to our firefighters so we can conduct some sort of ARF safety training on this emerging technology. Cato Aviation wants to conduct ARF training period statewide. I've done this in the past as an airport manager. It basically for airports that are in rural communities that don't have an ARF trained firefighter on hand, the rural community first responders typically don't know how to respond to an aviation accident or incident. So we've conducted first responder crash course that intended to be just a one-day course, free course for first responders, and we enlist the help of the FAA, the NTSB, and an ARF-trained firefighter to come in and discuss responding to various aircraft accidents, from the materials, from the potential ballistic chute, from where the fuel lines are located, just to give them a primer on what it takes to respond to an aircraft accident or incident, because they're not used to it. And then looking at that, we're looking at doing that statewide, again, free of charge, and we'll have multiple courses soon. And as soon as the electric aircraft information comes out, we'll incorporate that into that specific training. So we're hopeful to work along.
The FAA Office of Airports has done a great job of establishing, on their website, they have all the things of converting, heliports right now to vertipads, or helipads to vertipads. But one of the things I would say is that the aircraft certification offices have, created this opportunity to go around to manufacturers of eVTOLs and, kind of learn, see what we're doing. In fact, they were just here last week. We had a whole group of individuals here looking at how we're building the airplane so they better understand and learn it. And we actually go through this journey together hand in hand. And what I would recommend is that, we have that same group of types of people on the other side for Office of Airports or whatever to kind of come along as well, to better understand what, we as industry are doing with these vehicles and how we intend to use them. I think, look, anytime you can partner with the regulator, anytime you can partner with industry and state, local, and federal government, it's a win, right? It's when everybody sits in their own specific silo of excellence, as I call it, and doesn't communicate. The next thing here we are, we want to do this. And, I was on that other side of the fence, so I can, speak on behalf of the regulator. It's daunting, because it's like, you don't want to say no, you want to help them out. But at some point you have to say no, because they didn't do due diligence. It's incumbent on the applicants that want to use the National Airspace System to effectively know the rules, use the rules, and stay within the rules. So
Very well said. Along those lines of working with the regulators, one of our airport planners for the state, Jason Knipp, just posted a message regarding our index. And Jason's going to be here for just a few more days until he moves on specifically for emerging technology office. Jason, want to say a couple of things or?
Yeah, I've been with the FAA for about 10 years. I've been in the airports industry for 25. I will be moving to headquarters for the Airports Division's Office of Emerging Entrants. So I'll be on the side listening into some of these things while Russ Owen, who's also one of the Kansas planners, will be on these calls so that we can kind of keep tabs on what Kansas might be doing. So it all as to what Antonio said earlier is coalescing around all of this and figuring out what we need to do.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Tony. If there's anything that we can do, we do have an engagement effort with the MITRE Corporation to roadmap AAM implementation statewide. It will be a statewide effort, and MITRE will engage with multiple stakeholders to understand needs and see how we can all basically develop a strong ecosystem for Kansas that is very Kansas specific. So what we do here isn't the same thing that will succeed somewhere else. So we're excited to have that process be ongoing, and we're excited to learn how we can potentially support Textron eAviation and help grow your offerings because you are our hometown OEM. So thank you again, Tony.
Yep, you bet.
All right. Up next, Salina Airport Authority, and Peter, take it away.
Hello, everyone. This is Peter Miller. I'm the Executive Director of the Salina Airport Authority. So I won't go into a whole lot of detail. I've been with the Salina Airport. It'll be a year in October as the Deputy Director. I've only been actually in the Director's position for going on right about 2 months now. So one of the lines of effort when the first couple of months I was here, we referred to it as Salina West. And it bear with me a second here. It will all kind of make sense when I start talking about Salina West and our AAM efforts. Actually, let me get the screen up here first. That might actually help. So can everybody see that? So
yes,
okay.
sir.
So our Salina West development was in a direct response to several different things, not the least of which is both kind of what's going on right now with advanced air mobility and where we see it going in the future, as well as some efforts that we're undertaking with the military. So there's 300 acres on the west side of the Salina Airport that we are working on opening up for basically three different aspects: military, Department of Defense contractors, as well as law enforcement. We have found that a lot of the different things that are taking place on the east side of the airport, there's some different industry secrets. I shouldn't say industry secrets, but there are certain things that people don't want other people to know about advancing aircraft and who's working on what and what's flying in and out, stuff like that. So we thought it might make sense to separate, some of the Department of Defense and the military from the general aviation and the business side of the airport. So hence, here we are on the Salina West development. This was originally, I told you when I first started, this was originally going to be a 15 to 20 year project. About 6 months ago, it became a 10 to 20 or 10 to 15 year project. About 3 months ago, it became a 5 to 10. Here recently, it's now a 3 to 5 year project. So there's been enough interest in us talking about Salina West that people are approaching us and asking, "Hey, what can we do to help? How can we push this forward? What do we need to do to assist you to so we can develop some of our space over on that side of the airport?" So kind of just real quickly, we're going through an ALP update with one of our selected consultants to make sure it's on the airport layout plan and it meets all the land use requirements on airports. We're also including some different concepts for utilities, any special facility needs, and concepts for access. Basically, how do we get to that side of the airport? What roads need to be improved? Any easements, right-of-way acquisition, whatever it is we need to do to make these lots more attractive. Over here, we do have a kind of one of the I don't want to call them an anchor tenant, but one of the driving forces behind this is actually the military. They are wanting to expand the Army Aviation Support Facility number 2 to the west side to support their up and coming. I think it was I forget the name. It's the Bell Valor 209. I think the tilt rotor aircraft that will
B280.
be the L280 in the next 5 to 10 years when those start deploying, as well as to help support the MQ-1C Gray Eagle nomination that the Kansas Army National Guard is chasing down. So the idea being we can support those types of operations and those types of aircraft on the new facilities that we have on the west side of the airport without interfering too much with anything that's going on the east side, the deployments and the airline. So as part of that, we've completed a risk assessment for some airspace to support that. That's been made it up to Topeka and is being reviewed and part of their overall project. So along with the Salina West, while this doesn't have to do directly with Salina West, it's all kind of in the same vein. So actually tomorrow morning at 9:30, we are breaking ground on the Aerospace Innovation and Simulation, the K-ARI Center, K-State Salina is. This was a joint project between the Salina Airport Authority, K-State Salina, Department of Defense contractors, Pyramation Labs, Intel, NVIDIA, and General Atomics, among others. So the Salina Airport Authority had a pretty big role initially with this project. It's now mostly in the hands of K-State, and they're kind of steering the ship at this point. We're still involved with renting out temporary space to both Pure Imagination Labs as well as some of the Department of Defense contractors, and working with K-State Salina on development of that project. So that center, I pulled these images off one of the initial slide decks that was shared with us. So some of the types of projects that will go through the K-ARI Center, basically immersive entertainment experiences, as well as aircraft vehicle maintenance training simulations, basically virtual equipment and systems that can provide kind of the step-by-step guidance and risk-free practice, remote air traffic control, digital tower simulation and training, as well as simulations for UAVs and remotely piloted aircraft, different training and operations. There's actually more involved there too, but it doesn't directly have to do with the advanced air mobility. It's mostly just anything public safety, security, special operations team simulations. This will support all sorts of different virtual aspects for advanced environmentability and others. So here's another slide that I pulled out. Of course, it shows the MQ-1 sitting in there just as a rendering to kind of show what's going on. So like I said, they're breaking ground on that tomorrow, with it to be up and functional by, I think, Q4 of 2025, end of the year of next year. So I think that's what they're aiming for. So here's I brought up some pictures of the concepts for the simulation as part of the K-ARI Center. So along with those efforts, there is also, we are working through exactly what we want to include with an airport master plan update, which will include AAM considerations. We're literally just getting started on that. Of course, I mentioned we're updating the airport layout plan. We have also started working through negotiations to establish and develop a vertiport feasibility analysis with a selected planning company or airport planning company that will basically pull together the guidelines for the engineering brief 105 for vertiports, as well as reference aircraft with the performance criteria, the design standards, approach profiles, and everything that's needed in order to figure out where your vertiport should be and what makes sense, how big they need to be, locations, approach, departure points, all those types of things. So I guess when I started talking, I should have introduced, we were going to tag team this a little bit. Lindsay Dreiling from Dreiling Aviation Services has been basically a key partner with the Salina Airport, helping us develop and come up with these different plans and trying to figure out where advanced air mobility is going and what role the Salina Airport and the Salina Airport Industrial Complex can play with that. And so I think, can you guys, she gave me a slide to put up on there. I think she's on the phone here. Lindsay, are you there?
Yes, I am.
So, okay, I think I'll hand it over,
Okay.
hand this over to you and let you talk a little bit about what you've been kind of doing for us and where you see us going.
You bet. So hi, everybody. Just quick background. Know some of you on the call, but not everybody. So background in traditional aviation, that's what I originally studied and went into. Did work at the DOT for some time. At the final position was their deputy director for aviation and UAS. And then had worked for Kansas State University in their executive office, specifically regarding strategy. Went to L3 Harris, helped them with their AAM and getting started with their product lines for advanced air mobility, and then started my own aviation company. So specifically in regards to Salina, Ray had asked us to talk a little bit about, we did go after a funding opportunity recently and got to talking about some of our outreach efforts. This has been key. Just as Tony had mentioned, we know that, you know, some people are really excited about what AAM can offer, and then other people don't know what AAM is. You know, we have to use the term air taxi, and, you know, just getting people into common language and understanding that not only in the community, but in a variety of stakeholders. So just put up this slide here to give you an idea. I know there's a lot of information out there, but some of this is things we've already started. The key stakeholder portions, we have been engaging with those stakeholders, I would say easily for the last year and a half, maybe longer than that. And that involves anyone that's out at the airport, of course, our regulators, our educators, and then working with specific companies as well. So when we start to talk about what does that public outreach look like, we have started to build that into our common meetings, right? We have public meetings as an airport already built in. So starting to bring in that type of conversation and the long-term strategy for the Salina Airport into those conversations as well. So being able to invite community members out to those and hear some of those concerns and hear some of the ideas that they have too of what interests them about this type of growth in aviation. And so we have had community events around it as well, and plan to have more of those as we start to bring those companies to the airport, but inviting those people in to have that ongoing dialogue, not only in our regular meetings, but in our specific events as well. And so as we're starting to build those plans, as Peter had mentioned, all of the conversations that he's been having simultaneously, we're having those conversations with the general public and with our stakeholders as well. So just giving one example, a recent project that we did, even with specific to aviation maintenance. So there is a pre-apprenticeship program out at the Salina Airport, and even just within that education program, so students can get a pre-apprenticeship in aviation maintenance and go directly into aviation maintenance, which, you know, isn't directly related to AAM at first, but then of course, as you start to talk about the ecosystem, as Tony had mentioned as well, of everything that not only infrastructure, but workforce. So trying to keep that in mind is, okay, these are our goals. We have infrastructure needs, we have workforce needs. What can we do to start planting those seeds and having those conversations early? So building that into the tracks. And so again, even in this pre-apprenticeship program, we're starting to introduce students into the concept of AAM and what does that mean for composites technology and how the growth in that field is going to look like. And things like that. So that's just one example of how we're bringing that into not only the education side, but continuing to work with our partners. K-State has been mentioned multiple times. Also, Salina Tech is out on the airport as well. So continuing to work with them because they have skill sets through their specific skill programs. So for example, they have a painting program that is closely aligns with what we're doing there too. And then culture building, which, as we all know, that's the big one. That's going to take a lot of time, but we do have plans for anytime that we have an event, that pre-awareness, and again, trying to build that positive messaging beforehand, but then even that post-strategy engagement as well. So being able to relay these success stories and share that out. As we know, airports specifically can, they're usually set outside the town a lot of times. And so not always the public knows about all the activity that's happening at the airport. So making sure we're being able to share those success stories and report back not only to the general public, but you kind of see down there in the long-term strategy and vision is that as we build as a community, having those conversations with our EcoDevo office, our chamber, and that way it's built into their strategies as well. So as our community is building, what does this Salina look like in 15, 20 years? That advanced air mobility is also in those plans and not just in the airport's plans. So that's kind of a very high level rundown, but happy to answer any questions in regard to outreach strategy as well.
I can't. Anybody hear Ray?
Ray, you appear to be on mute, but we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Well, Ray is trying to work that out. Lindsay, I do agree 100% with you on that outreach. I mean, just over the weekend, McConnell had their get together and I know it was unfortunate day too, but, just hearing the turnout and where all these people were coming from and the interest in it, it's the public is very interested in this kind of technology and aviation and things like that. So I think that's where we can put our best foot forward and start engaging them once the technology comes out and just start exposing them to them and getting the youth involved. I worked real close with Pure Imagination, bringing them to Salina here on that project. And, they're looking at doing a mobile unit to go around and expose this technology to school kids and stuff. So yeah, any kind of outreach, and you can be proactive before all the naysayers jump in. You're already out there with the truth. So I applaud that and yeah, support that 100%.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, the response that we've had thus far, anecdotally, it's been very, very positive. Just as you're saying, people are more interested than they are anything else. And so I think if we can bring them along and get them a part of that process so that they feel like they've been there at the beginning instead of, having kind of a shock to it as it all comes about, that it's been very positive, knock on wood, but so far all of the projects that we've wanted to do and seek out, it's been very supportive in this community and even in the broader community as well.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh my goodness. All right, computer issues. Sorry about that once again, but Lindsay, one of the things that, thank you to you and Peter. I'll discuss the grant program here, maybe if my computer is working right. But one of the things that I was able to see through that grant program is the level of outreach that Salina does. And I was absolutely blown away. So I definitely want to capture that and be able to share that with airports. Not only for an AAM conversation, but outreach in general is extremely important to each airport to engage with their community and be able to get support and communicate their services to their community. So thank you for participating. I look to learn more about Salina's outreach activities and hopefully share that with airports for the betterment of all.
Excellent. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any other questions for Lindsay or Peter before we move on? All right. sorry for the delay there, but our next up, Heinen Brothers, Kelly Hills, Unmanned Systems, and Mr. Lucas Koch. If you're on the phone or on the computer and everything is working for you, take it away, Lucas.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, well, my name is Lucas Koch. I'm with Heinen Brothers Aviation. We're out of Seneca, Kansas. Been in business for 30 years. A traditional aerial application company here. Right now, they started with one airplane and now running a fleet of several dozen across the entire United States. So generally the Western U.S., but we've done a little work on the East too. We've got helicopters as well, and service agricultural markets and firefighting. So we're the seat or the single engine air tanker for Kansas Forestry Service. And obviously have had plenty of fire activity here in the last couple of years. So as we saw, a lot of UAS start to get some uptake in agriculture, we try to position ourselves and be a player. So we were working on some projects internally for about 5 years and in stealth mode. And finally, last week, we held our grand opening of a business called Kelly Hills Unmanned Systems. We just call it Kelly Hills for short, a little homage to the 40-person town out here called Kelly, Kansas, which is very near our headquarters. So what Kelly Hills does is we're a member of the Beyond program, had really good leadership early on from Brian Kaysen. Obviously a program that Tony LaCourte had, has his fingers, in working and building that to start with, and we're very fortunate for that relationship and for the people who started that. We're very grateful. We saw a lot of smaller drones kind of getting built, used for agricultural purposes, but nothing that on a commercial side we could use or utilize very well. So with work with Brian and several companies that he and I talk to on a regular basis, we're able to get a little traction there. Next, we went and added a UAS test range. So it's a public COA. We're working with University of Fairbanks, Alaska, one of the original people to get those approvals and abilities from the FAA. It's roughly 49,000 square miles and it covers parts of 4 states. So the idea there is not what is traditionally those are used for. I mean, I've been a lot of the ranges, really cool things that obviously happened there over the last 12 years, but I didn't really need something for testing sake or research sake, but more for commercialization sake. So there's a lot of venture capital backed companies that are out there, and essentially on a business front, they get X amount of dollars and then they're given a runway, no pun intended. And that is what they operate off of. So they've got to go get customers and build a product, and they're always on this timeline. It's pretty stressful. So instead of maybe going and facilitating working with a range or a test site to help them do research and testing, we wanted to give them a commercial angle as well. So we have fields here, obviously covered by this public COA, that allow companies to come here and do testing in a real commercial environment, something that they would find. Right now, it's heavily focused on agriculture, but the folks who actually gave us the introduction to Kathy Cahill and team at Alaska are building a firefighting drone. So we want to bring fire technology to Kansas. We want to bring, obviously, cutting edge ag technology to Kansas, and pretty much everything that goes along with those two industries, as they're our core industry. So part of that, of the grand opening, was test flight observation of a company called Pika. So they've got basically it's a Cessna 172 size bird. It's 38-foot wingspan, 1,300 pound max takeoff weight, flies for about 45 minutes, and it's completely autonomous. So you map it out, click the buttons, off you go. Part of the draw there is that they needed commercialization in the United States. What I'm seeing on this end is dozens of large airframes. They're being built and nowhere to go quickly in the United States to make a go of it. So they're being built in the US and then going to other countries to try to find traction. Obviously, being a citizen here, we want to keep that technology in the United States. More importantly, as being born and raised in Kansas and living in Kansas now and moving home, we want that technology to stay in Kansas. We think it's definitely the intersection of agriculture and aviation. As Brian has termed it, this is the third generation of flight, and we wanted to help have a say in our industries of how that will unravel. So I'll keep it short, but essentially that's what we're doing. The grand opening, thank you to all who attended. We had folks from 30 states, 6 countries, and 121 companies show up to Seneca, Kansas to talk about how they can get their UAS or advanced air efforts off the ground, what we have to offer. And I think us coordinating our efforts is fantastic. And right now we're currently working probably in similar angles with other folks, trying to get ground-based radars just to get some true beyond visual line of sight capabilities, as we're finding ADS-B obviously works fantastic way high in the sky, but that protocol has always not worked or performed very well around trees and hills and down the ground where we're operating at. So it's a giant question mark. And what do we do here? We found some headway that has been created. Somebody kind of taken a little bit of lead from North Dakota, but personally, I wouldn't want to see every state have their own, big beyond visual line of sight programs and then have to integrate a layer on top of that to get all of them to talk in 10 years and have, just creating more problems. So I think 100% we could align on some of our goals and what we're hoping to achieve as a state. And we'd be happy to collaborate with everybody. For the folks that were there, obviously a lot of pro Kansas talk that day. And after leaving the event, just a lot of excitement, a lot of people who were wanting to know what's next, companies saying, how do we get involved? And of those companies that were present, 20 of them are building drones, obviously a lot under NDA that I can't really talk about, and you guys are familiar with that sort of thing, but none of them have figured out where they're going to build these things. And I think if we could come together, obviously the race to this autonomous aviation front is a long race. In college and in personal life, I was a runner, and I describe it right now as we're in a race. I don't know what the distance is. We're not leading, but just because somebody took the lead at the very beginning doesn't mean they win the race, right? That just means they lead for a certain amount of time. I'd say right now we're definitely mid-pack. There's been fantastic things that have been done here across multiple industries, and that we can continue to push forward here and at some point make a push for the lead. And I think if we can get coordinated on a state level across multiple industries and be bringing people's ideas from different countries here, getting that done first, and then ultimately championing U.S. countries to get it all done in Kansas, I could see us coming out as a winner. So I just don't know how long the race is. But other than that, I appreciate the time. Actually, we left the grand opening on Thursday and came straight out to the largest agricultural trade show in North America. This year it's in Boone, Iowa. Pulled back and forth between Iowa, Missouri, or Iowa and Illinois. 500,000 people walked through here from across the United States and several countries. And we had a booth, and we brought some of our partners, right, that were at the grand opening. And the drone company out of Louisiana won new product of the show. So I think we're right on, and people are starting to learn about Kelly Hills, and I'd be honored to collaborate with folks with a lot of experience in Kansas. So I don't want to run for the 4 o'clock hour, but thanks to everybody. And yeah.
Thank you, Lucas. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yay! All right. Well, thank you again. And so Brian within the division speaks very highly of you, and you have been a valued partner for a while now. So thank you again for the invite. That was an amazing event. Several people on this call were at that event and were absolutely blown away by it. Several people on this call are great stakeholders for that discussion that you're mentioning. And we'd love to have that conversation offline with these stakeholders to determine how we can best support a state of Kansas approach. Listening to conversation with WSU, I am looking at this cool Pica aircraft, and to my uneducated eyes, I'm a pilot, to my uneducated eyes, this thing looks awesome. And you know, WSU was like, well, yeah, it's pretty cool, but we can probably help them with this and that. And I'm like, okay. So obviously there's a lot of resources in Kansas from academia, from manufacturing, from the regulatory, from testing. And there's a lot that we can bring to the table to try to convince some of these companies to come do business in Kansas. So we'd love to have that conversation, especially through you and with you as a value partner. So definitely look forward to getting together some of the stakeholders and having that conversation with you.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, thank you again, Lucas. So I know that we're running a little long on time. I do have another real quick presentation. The recording will be available, hopefully. I'm not sure. It should be available. I've had some technical difficulties, but I'll go ahead and go through this presentation real quick. Feel free to hop off and just catch the recording if you need to go. Thank you again for everybody for participating. For those that are new to the call, I've invited the Kansas Public Service Airports, or public use airports rather. So there may be some new people to the call. Just a kind of a going over a little bit of terminology: advanced air mobility, emerging aviation technology capable of serving previously hard to reach urban and rural locations. Typically either electric or hybrid, can be conventional, short, or vertical takeoff. We do have a Beta and an Archer here, but obviously, yes, we do have Textron as our home OEM that is absolutely part of this field. So there's different planning levels. There's statewide ecosystem planning, and we're engaged in that right now with our various stakeholders throughout the state. So this isn't just a, one Department of Transportation or Commerce, or this is an academia, state government, private industry, commercial operations. This is a statewide planning effort that is currently going on. And we need to understand the electrification and infrastructure improvements needed on the statewide level, manufacturing and support services, workforce development, education, outreach, economic impact, statewide implementation. What do we need to look at from statewide implementation? So we're currently conducting a statewide implementation roadmap, and again, it is through MITRE, so MITRE will likely reach out to all of these stakeholders currently on the call. But looking at what can we do at the local level, and these are some things to look at planning for. And again, by no stretch am I an expert on this. These are things that we've heard from several meetings and from several efforts countrywide. But the first thing to planning for airport and community planning on an airport or community level is don't plan for AAM. So don't plan for advanced air mobility or just plan for advanced air mobility. Look for projects that are going to benefit the community and benefit the airport immediately, that could have benefit for advanced air mobility in the future. So don't look for a project that just is the speculative project that looks to make an improvement based on potential traffic that you might get in the future. Definitely look at things that you can use right now that can benefit you in the future, though. And absolutely prioritize projects. Don't look at an electrification project if your runway is, gravel, right? And if your runway is falling apart, or if your infrastructure is in need of investment. So definitely prioritize projects for your airport. First thing is, it's easy to talk to people. So engage with your electric utility. That doesn't cost you anything. Just let them know what your plans are, what you'd like to do, and where you'd like to be in the next 3, 5, 10 years. Some of these upgrades to utilities might take several years to implement. So if you wait for something to come to the airport that absolutely needs the investment and improvement in infrastructure, if you wait, then it might be that much longer before you're able to make some of these improvements. So start the conversation early with your electric utility. It's never too early to start that conversation, to understand where you're at, where you want to go, and get their input and participation. Understand the availability of three-phase electric by if it's close, if it's on the airport, if you need additional upgrades to get it there. And if you look for opportunities for on-site generation, it may reduce your need for some of those utility upgrades. So if you're able to make some of your power on-site through on-site solar, please don't stick a wind farm at the end of the runway. FAA folks will be upset with that, right? But look for on-site generation, whether that's solar, whether that's potentially nitrogen, if we're looking at and actually recognizing operations that need that. Again, don't be speculative about what you might need, but look for things that you can absolutely use right now. Consider a battery energy storage solution or a battery energy storage system that can kind of mellow out peak demand and help you meet some of the needs without having an upgraded system. So this is all new technology that you can consider. As an airport manager, I had areas at the airport that were less than marketable. I had land that maybe I couldn't lease or land that wasn't ideal. Potentially, that might be a location to have a solar farm. So look for opportunities for on-site generation based on your unique circumstance at the airport. Consider a fleet electrification. So if your airport vehicles, your ground service equipment, if all of those are aging and they've been amortized out, then look for opportunities for electrification. There are grants, federal grants available to help you electrify your fleet and be more energy efficient. Convert your fleet to electric vehicles or zero emissions vehicles, and we'll discuss those in a little bit. But consider doing that to, again, bring the infrastructure onto the field and be able to get immediate benefit, and then allow that infrastructure to grow as the advanced air mobility or the electric aircraft grows. The need for electric aircraft grows. Consider these projects for energy resilience, not only for normal operations, but also emergency operations. If there's a natural disaster and your community is without power, if you have on-site generation and battery backup and generators, if you have all of this already built in, then it's another point that is a valuable resource for your community. So when you're having these discussions with your locals, with city and county council, basically saying, here are some of the upgrades that we'd like to make, here is why. Don't tell them about the advanced air mobility blackening the skies over the airport, because we want to temper expectations and give them something that's actually reasonable. I don't want to ask somebody to invest in something that may come in the next 5 to 10 years, but I do want to ask them to invest in something that can provide immediate benefit to the community. Of course, discuss with your airport consultants, the engineers, and our FAA partners. If you have an outdated master plan, if you have an old master plan, then consider adding these infrastructure improvements to your master plan. Consider adding them to your airport layout plan and include them in your capital improvement updates to the FAA. Put them in the 6 to 10 year project. That way it's at least bookmarked and you can start thinking about that project. When you're looking at siting the infrastructure, again, you don't want to have it next to an additional fuel farm. So the FAA right now has, or at least there's a recommendation of at least having it 80 feet away, if not more. You don't want to add literal fuel to the fire by having your electric infrastructure right next to gasoline infrastructure, in case you do have those fire concerns. And then also consider multimodal use. If you're able to get, if you have an airport bus that moves people around, potentially convert that equipment with your fleet. Consider your water needs. Some airports have water service lines that are inadequate for any additional usage, anything outside of what they currently have. So thinking about those aircraft rescue and firefighting needs, if there is a fire at your airport with some of these electric either ground service vehicles or your electric aircraft, do you have water that's readily available nearby for your firefighters? Is it in a convenient location? Is there sufficient quantity to meet those needs? Or do you have to go 10 miles away for a fire hydrant? So consider that as part of your project. Also consider nearby firefighting capability and train accordingly. So we can't, not all the airports have ARF on site, obviously, if they're not commercial service airports. Consider working with your local first responders to give them that training that they will need in order to respond to a fire. Have that conversation with airport users, businesses, the community. Rinse, lather, repeat, right? I've heard a lot of people talk about how their communities or the lack of communication with their communities led to the communities implementing things that made AAM nearly difficult or fairly impossible to implement locally. So work with your community so they understand what you're trying to do. Show them the potential for the technology to apply to the community and have an active engagement effort. Open line of communication and then outreach is absolutely vital. So these are some of the things that are going to be key to anything you do at the airport, let alone trying to grow your infrastructure. I did mention some grants available. There is the airport electrification, voluntary airport low emissions vehicle. It is available. It's available to commercial service airports. Eligible projects include mobile and stationary equipment, and the airports have to be within a non-attainment or a maintenance area for the National Ambient Air Quality. Right now, Saline County, so yay Salina, and the Kansas City area are the only two within Kansas, but that can certainly change. So look for that grant funding opportunity for vehicles and for equipment, charge equipment, as a possible grant funding source. Now, this is grant funding for your equipment. It's not intended for anyone else. It's not intended for customers. It's not intended for people flying in. This gets the infrastructure onto your field, gets you immediate access to electrification, and has that as a potential source for the future. It's always easier to add additional chargers on if your equipment on site is rated properly and sized properly, and when you're developing, you develop for the future as well. So with the Vail, it looks like the FAA has pre-applications due by November, and then the time frame is late January to early March for the full applications are due in, or excuse me, are typically due in end of May to late June, rather. So get your pre-applications in either the Kansas City area or Salina if you're interested in Vail. I have a link to the Vail at the end of the presentation, and I'll send the presentation out. Another one is zero emissions vehicles, open to public use NIPIAS airports that are eligible to receive AIP grants. Eligible projects include zero emissions vehicles, owned on-road vehicles. These vehicles have to remain with the airport for their useful life, but on-site fuel storage tanks and on-site generation, essentially that will help you bring the infrastructure again onto the airport, and no more than 10% can be used by others. So again, it's not intended for people visiting the airport. It's not intended to grow out AAM. However, it brings that infrastructure to the airport, and then it's easier typically to add on to that. And similar timeline with the zero emissions vehicles. They are open to public use, AIP eligible NIPIAS airports. With the FAA, you can, there's grant funding available for renewable energy, including solar power, airport electrification projects, and electrification studies. And then you have the same basic grant, the KAIP, the Kansas Airport Improvement Program, KDOT cost share, and innovative technology. That's the state level grant funding that's potentially available. So the grant project that I mentioned earlier, the state, KDOT applied for an FHWA charging and fuel infrastructure or CFI grant to install chargers at 2 airports within the state. Salina and Wichita's Jabara Airport were chosen specifically because of their location and having an aviation-specific academic institution located on the field. The project was to install 1 DC fast charger airside at Salina and 3 level 2 chargers landside. And then at Jabara, 2 level 2 chargers landside and a DC fast charger and a level 2 charger airside. So we've applied for the grant. I'm not sure if we'll get it or not. It's not intended for that particular purpose, but we put our best foot forward for applying for the grant. And the great thing is that it offered a great exercise to get all of the needed information. That way, if we aren't successful with this particular grant, but we do recognize another grant opportunity, we can move forward with that application for state infrastructure. The grant, in addition to having WSU and KSU at those airports, this grant would allow the airport to electrify their fleets. It would allow these colleges to be able to get electric aircraft and add that to their fleets. And it would also allow for the academic research and development of WSU and KSU within AAM. So we saw a lot of bang for the buck with this grant to really improve research and development statewide and actually nationally through these academic institutions. So through this process, Beta provided a possible route map that is possible with their current aircraft, their current platform, using these 2 locations, Salina and Jabara. So the 2 big dots in the center there you see is the DC fast chargers at Salina and Jabara. These routes are possible routes based on the current aircraft range, but it also assumes that all of these other locations have some sort of charge capability. So that it could be a portable charger or it could be another DC fast charger. Looking at this, it really kind of drives it home that we're able to reach rural Kansas with just a couple of chargers and potentially smaller charges at some of these other locations. But with that in mind, Kansas has 7 commercial service airports. Topeka is still commercial service. They maintain their certificate, but they're not active. But taking a look at where the potential is, if there is a fast charger that is potentially installed at each of these commercial service airports, that could potentially improve access, not only border to border, but beyond Kansas borders. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to do that. However, just looking at that is extremely exciting from providing that access. And I'm hopeful that we're able to find a commercial operator that's interested in high value cargo or air ambulance transport that can look at this and basically say, using this new platform, this new technology would allow us to access this at hopefully reduced, more efficiently operating. So one of the things that, again, we have in the state, a valuable resource is Textron eAviation. That's our home OEM. There's potential to, with their electric offerings and their hybrid offerings, to have these within flight schools to help greatly reduce operating expenses for these flight schools. So looking at minimum infrastructure throughout the state doesn't necessarily just have to be for commercial operations of air ambulance or cargo or whatever. It could also help improve flight training and growing aviation operations throughout the state. Medical deliveries to rural hospitals. We have heard so many hospitals closing down or reducing their services in rural Kansas because they can't get medical supplies or they can't get access to medical professionals because of the rural nature of the hospitals. So this is a potential use case or a potential opportunity for us. Basic thing is, we're in the process of looking at the statewide needs and We need to engage with commercial operators to understand their needs, but also showcase what we're trying to do to see what it would take to grow commercial operations within the state that can reach every Kansan, that can improve access to rural Kansas. With that said, here are the links, and I'll send this presentation out so you can get additional information. Our next meeting is scheduled for September the 26th. There is a Kansas Association of Airports annual conference that will be in Topeka, September 9th through 11th. So there is an opportunity for an in-person working group meeting at that meeting, during the conference. The Kansas Association of Airports is open to having that meeting. So I guess question to the group is, do we want to shoot for a September 26th meeting in addition to the KAA meeting, or do we want to just skip the September meeting and just go to the KAA meeting? Any input?
Ray, if I had a vote on that, which, okay, I do, I vote for both just because of the benefit we get out of meeting like we are here. And I don't know that everybody could make it to the Topeka one. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. Anyone else?
This is April. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I will agree with Tim. I mean, for me, if I am available, I would like to attend both, because each sounds like each conference would provide a very important value. I mean, they may not be the same, but all important value. And that's correct.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Well, since we do have people from all across the state that are participating, we will go ahead and count on the September meeting, and then count on also meeting at KAA for October. So that will be our October meeting. If you guys have anything, let me know. Hopefully the recording is working. It looks like it is. I've had many technical difficulties, but thank you guys, and sorry for going over here. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.